Hello, and welcome back. This video is about video resolution options. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Thank you for helping me help others. So to start, a minor correction for the set volume function here in the Blueprint function library. Apply settings here is a bad idea because it will apply resolution settings, which if you're in the middle of doing some resolution stuff and you call apply settings, it'll reapply it and potentially cause some issues. So because of that, there is also a apply, resolution, and non-resolution settings. So we want non-resolution here. Can control drag that here. Of other special note, the editor itself will use some command line overrides. So for testing resolution stuff, you're going to want to have this unchecked, which we'll do in the appropriate sections in this video. So to start, we're going to create a new widget blueprint. This is WBP Video Options. And in here, like the audio options, we'll start with a border. We'll set that border color to dark. We'll throw in a vertical box. And then a text block for video options. Follow that up with a spacer. We use the usual 10 by 10, even though the X value doesn't matter. And we'll set that video options to centered. And then inside of here, I'm going to want a horizontal box so that we can have a text block along with a combo box, which is up in input. We want the string version. For both of these, we're just going to set it to full fill. We'll set the text here to window mode with a colon. And the combo box, we want this called window mode combo box. Needs to be a variable. I'm going to duplicate the spacer a few times and throw two of them down there. One's in. Actually, no, it's not. Undo that. Now, if you wanted to add options to it, there's default options here. You can add it to the array. And we could add those fields manually, but we're not UI or UX designers, we're coders, so we'll do it in Blueprint. However, because of the color scheme that this playlist is using, the drop down in the combo box is kind of hard to read, so we can just change a few of these to make that better. And in that case, what we're looking for is under item style. There are very many options here. We want the even and odd background hover or hover brush and brush. So we'll just pop open all four of these. Oops. The first thing of note is that the backgrounds are set to draw as none. So we'll switch those to image. Now you don't have to use the even odd functionality, but might as well. And then the way that that works is just you make the tint for each just a little different. All right, so for our backgrounds of each, we'll just make this a light bluish color. I'm just going to grab this hex RGB and apply it down here. And then just move it slightly over here. And then for the hover value, we could do something similar. We'll set that there. You can see the alpha is initially set to 0.1, so it's kind of hard to see. We just pop that up to 1 or 0.5 or whatever. And then for the brighter version, we can just pop the saturation up a bit. Let's grab this color here. Throw it in here, pop this back up to 1. And increase the saturation. So with that done, we can then take our horizontal box, duplicate that, and put it just between the two spacers here. This one will be our resolution combo box, and with text, resolution. With that set up, we can go into the graph. The first thing we want is a function. We'll call this update settings. This is just being called from the event construct. And in update settings, the first thing we're doing is getting our game user settings. With that, we can just promote that to a local variable. We'll call it td_gus again. And with that, we're going to do a few things. So I'm going to do a sequence. Now, the way that the game user settings differentiates between Windows, borderless, and full screen is through full screen mode. So if we use our td_gus, we call get full screen mode, you can see that it returns a window mode enum. So if we drag that out and we do a switch, we can see that the entries available are here. So it'd be nice if we could use an enum to actually iterate through all of these values. If you try and drag that out and do a for each, you'll see that that's not a thing. However, if we just do for each without dragging it out, you can see there's a lot of stuff down here, and all these start with an E. So what we want is our E window mode. So that's some built-in functionality that will let us iterate through the values of an enum. So since we have that, we can take our window mode combo box. We can call add. You can see there are very, very many add options that pop up here. The one we want is in combo box, add option. And for that, we just want the enum converted to a string. Now, unfortunately, when windowed full screen is converted to a string this way, it does not put a space. You can add that somehow if you want, but for now, we'll leave it as is. And we want it as is for now because of what we'll write a little bit later. So now that we have those entries added to the window mode combo box, we can control drag that out again. We want to call get option count. That will tell us how many entries are in there, which we know is 3. And then we want to subtract 1 from this. Oops, we want to subtract and then put a 1. And we use this for a for loop. Now, if you drag that out like that, it'll put it on at the first index. We actually want it on the last. This index going from 0 to 2 in this case is important instead of 1 to 3 because of how we're about to use it. And how we're using it is we also want to call get option at index, sending along this index. And if this value is equals, we want a string equals. We could use either of these two should work, but we'll just do equals exactly. Again, it's being set right there, so should work just fine. And we're comparing that to our get full screen mode. This will get converted to a string, just like above. Oops. And when the current full screen mode is equal to the entry in the combo box that we're iterating through, we then want to set selected index. That index being here. And then lastly, we'll add another pin here for the purpose of adding all the resolutions. So to get the list of resolutions that are supported on your graphics card, it's not a game user setting entry, it's just a global function, which is get supported full screen resolutions. we're just hooking that up down here. It's an array of int points, so we can just for each through that. We're going to take our resolution combo box. We're going to be calling add option. Oops. And while you can just do this, you'll get a x equals the x value, y equals the other value. Instead, we want to just have a string append. We'll just put a lowercase x in the center. And this is a structure, so we can call break endpoint and just drag in the x and the y. Now, if we want to run this, we need to add it to our options screen. So similar to this here, we'll make it 600 wide and at a position, a relative position. So we'll go down to our user created, find our video options, add it to our canvas panel. We want to Control Shift Center, position X of -400, size of 600, and we'll just take the size Y also 600. There will be more entries in the next video. And then when we run that, there we go. We can see the nice colors that were chosen, and it's visible, unlike the default, which would be a very dark gray here. The resolutions has this big list here. Very colorful with the colors that were chosen. And then we can add some functionality to this. Of note is that this is going up to 1440p because that's what my monitor is. I record at 1080 for the benefit of the majority of users being able to run at 1080 or below, or above, rather. Of also important note is that I clicked here. When you're in when you're here, it goes in embedded. When you're not, it's basically the same as running new editor window. However, for testing resolution stuff, you do not want to use either of these. You may be able to get away with some of the functionality here, but instead we want to use standalone game. So I'm just going to set that for now. When you set it, it also does run it. So we'll do that. We'll just exit that and go back and finish our options. So for that, I want another new function called set window mode. For that, we'll take in a window mode. And this will be type window mode. In here, again, we're calling get game user settings. We'll use our version. And then just saving that as a local variable. So the purpose of this function is first of all to call our set full screen mode. We're going to be sending along the window mode, so I'll just get it here. And that by itself will do nothing because we need to call apply settings. So to do that, I'm going to add another sequence. And by the way, when you drag out and hit S, you get a sequence. So the end of this result here is that we're going to be calling, I don't want to drag that. I want my TD gust down here, and this will be apply settings, or in this case, we can use apply resolution settings. Again, we want this unchecked for testing in the editor. In a packaged build, you may want to recheck that if you want to allow your users to be able to override resolution settings. So then when we set full screen mode, if the mode is actually full screen, we are required to also call set screen, oh, that's from TDGus, set screen resolution. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take our window mode that we sent in. If it's equal to enum type full screen, then going to call set screen resolution. And in this case, I'm just going to do a make endpoint here. And I'm going to set this to 1920 by 1080. Now I'm setting this to a static value to my current desktop resolution. You do have other options. You could also call get desktop resolution and use that value instead. You could also call get last confirmed screen resolution and use that instead. It's up to you how you want this functionality to work, and similarly how it interacts with the resolution dropdown or combo box itself. One other thing to note is that when you're setting it to windowed instead of full screen or even windowed full screen, it will default to the the windowed full screen resolution. You get a borderless windowed full screen anyways, unless again you call set screen resolution. So I'm just going to make a copy down here. And in this case, I'm just going to use a smaller resolution, maintaining the same aspect ratio. So for that, I can use 1280 by 720. We have, if it's full screen, it calls this one. If it's not full screen, so if it's windowed or full screen windowed full screen, this will get called. In the case of windowed full screen, this won't actually have an effect, so it's fine to leave as is instead of doing another check against windowed. So with that, how do we call it? Back in here, we want on our window mode combo box, scroll down, add a selection changed event. Now the selection type here, actually if we do another switch to see what it is, you have key press, which obviously is key press. So if you open up the combo box and then use your arrow keys and hit enter, that's what this will do. Mouse click is obviously the mouse. Navigation, I don't know. But direct is when we set it. So in our update settings, we are calling set selected index here. When this is called, this event will happen. So we don't actually want to do anything in that case. So in this case, we're going to say if this enum is not equals to the direct option, then we want to continue. Now, there's no easy just convert a string back to an enum type. So in that case, we're going to do another for each on the E window mode. And for that, we want to then just compare this. We'll do the equal exactly again. It's going to be a branch. And this will be based on whether the enum value is equal to the one that was sent in. Let's pop this down here so it's a little easier to read. And if that's the case, then that's when we're calling set window mode and sending along the enum value. So we can test that as is now. So it was currently in windowed mode. If we set it to our windowed full screen, you can see that that works. I'm not going to set it to full screen for the video. You can try that because the recording may mess up. But full screen and window full screen are very similar, but this is exclusive mode. It works a little differently, and in this case, you can also set the resolution. One thing to note, if you set your full screen resolution too small, you may have some issues with the editor. So I'm just going to go back to windowed in this case, and then close that. For our resolution combo box, we also want to add an on selection changed event. We will duplicate this little bit here. And make sure that says direct. And for this, we want to get our game user settings. And we're just calling set screen resolution, followed by apply resolution settings. And the value we send in here, again, is an int point structure. So first we need to make that structure. And to get that, we can use the string that we're sending in. We can call a function that's on here called split. So the way that split works is we send an in string, in this case is our x, and it will give us the string value to the left and the right of that, which is conveniently our horizontal and vertical resolutions, which we drag in here, they get converted back to an int. Now if we run that, so this list of resolutions is actually populated by the full screen resolutions that are supported. So it's a design decision up to you whether you want this to work outside of when the window mode is set to full screen. So if you don't want that as soon as it's set to full screen, you can just simply disable or enable this box. However, since it's enabled for this, in windowed mode, we can just set it to something else. Like we'll go back to 1650 by, or 1680 by 1050. You can see that the ratio of everything changed because that is a 16 by 10, I want to say, instead of our usual 16 by 9. Given that, you could do some math on all of these values and see if you just don't want to allow certain ratios. But then if you want widescreen support, which is much more common nowadays, you wouldn't want to trim something like that out. If we're in our windowed full screen mode, then setting these values has no effect. And we go back to windowed. Actually, if we go back to this one, it looks very weird. We go to full screen and then back to windowed. It's resetting back to the setting we set previously here, as expected. Now, the one last thing we want to do, if I set this here to full screen or windowed full screen, and then I exit, and then I run again, you can see that there's no bar at the top. It is resizable. Oh, I guess there is a bar at the top, it's just hidden. But it was clearly in a windowed mode with a weird position instead. So to fix that, we then want to go into our game instance. And during begin play, we can call our get game user settings. And we can just call apply resolution settings. So then now is back into the actual windowed full screen mode. We go back into windowed, close this out, rerun it. And it's actually respecting our entries now. I'm not sure why that's required, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel, watch these videos 2 weeks early, or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.